Welcome, everyone, for another episode of the Hospitality Reputation Marketing Podcast. I'm Adele, your host. I am so excited to have Stuart Butler join us today. Stuart is the COO of Fuel Travel. What a great organization that is. And they have the number one hospitality marketing podcast. That's what I hear. Isn't that right, Stuart?
That's correct. We do. We've been doing that show for about 5 years now. We're about to hit episode 180, and we just won our second Adrian Award for it too. So it's now a two-time award-winning podcast. So we're a
Well,
lot of fun doing it.
it
Yeah.
sounds like you're having fun while you're doing it, which really makes it a lot of fun to listen to. I think all the good humor of Melissa and Pete and everyone, it just really makes you, when I listen to it, I have a 4 mile walk around my house. 1 hour is perfect to get me through that walk. And I feel so educated on the other side.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of similarities. I know we're going to be talking about reputation and reviews and things like that today, but there's really um, a, a need for authenticity in podcasting the same way there is in reviews and responding to reviews as well. We started our show really out of an organic place. We were having these interesting conversations in our office, especially at lunchtimes, and we said, there's value to this. Why don't we share this knowledge with the world and see if we can help people along the way? So we literally went out and bought a $70 microphone, plunked it in the middle of the table, and started hitting record on GarageBand on my laptop. And it's obviously evolved since then. The audio quality's gotten a lot better. And we've gotten a lot more sophisticated in terms of the production quality. But the core of what it is, we wanted it to be kind of like a campfire, just sitting down with friends and showing our true personalities, being ourselves, but having fun talking about the things we love, including, hotel marketing and beekeeping and everything in between. So,
I hear what you're saying because in the hotels where I worked at the Library Hotel Collection for the last 20 years, one of the things we were always saying to the team is be yourself, let your own personality shine through, because that's what people fall in love with when they come to the hotel and they connect with you on a real human to human basis. And
yeah.
so I think it probably is something that works in most companies. And also that feeling that the people really care about giving you a great experience. And I think that when you do your podcast, you walk in with a lot of great tips, very much prepared to deliver value. So I think everybody appreciates that.
Well, thank you. I mean, and it's funny because it's actually in the long run, it's easier just to be yourself and come prepared in terms of having knowledge. But if you're pretending to be something you're not, or trying to portray yourself in a way that isn't authentic, you're going to let your guard down at some point. If you're doing things in the shadows, sooner or later there's going to be light shined on it, and you're going to get caught caught out in a bad way. So starting out from a very honest and earnest place and saying, here's who I am, faults and all. We acknowledge our weaknesses. We poke fun and try to inject some levity towards the things that we know are our weaknesses. And I think that builds trust with our audience, and it's how we've been able to grow our audience over the years. And now, Fuel it's our number one business generator. It's where almost every conversation for a new sales pitch for our software or agency services start are, hey, I heard this on your podcast, or I've been listening to your podcast for so long, I feel like I know you, because it's, podcasting is such an intimate medium, and I want to further that relationship. So it's very, very similar to reviews and reputation
Well,
management.
there was one episode that I really enjoyed, which was, of course, the one that you did about getting great reviews and
Hmm.
getting a great reputation. I think the real prize was at the end when you said, guess what? Operations and marketing are the same thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I really need to talk to Stuart about this. We need to dive into that topic because I
Yeah,
think it's so true.
yeah. It really is, and it's not even that they're two sides of the same coin, which is the analogy some people use. It's that they're so intertwined. It's part, both are part of the DNA that makes up the whole. And when we talk about things like reviews, often people look at that as a to-do item. It's something on their checklist that they need to respond to reviews, and they really lose sight of the fact that it's part of their marketing, and it's part of their operations. It's part of who they are. And we can dig into that in a lot. I have a lot to say about that, but people just approach it from the wrong perspective because it's a to-do item. it There's a lot of it's their job, not our job. And so starting with a conversation, I think at the very top level of an organization, and saying, listen, we spend a lot of money to attract guests. And when they come onto property, our job is to deliver or exceed on those expectations, because we know that if we do a good job, setting the expectations, delivering on those, they're a lot more likely to come back. And it's a lot, from a business perspective, it's a lot more advantageous for us to keep having the same guests come back and going and turning into our secret sales force and becoming our brand advocates by spreading word of mouth positivity, than it is to burn every guest that comes and have to start again and find more guests to come and burn. So yeah, how people still keep these two very important pieces of the puzzle separated and siloed is beyond me. It doesn't make business sense. It doesn't make logical sense. And
Yeah, I
I've seen
think
more people buy into the fact that they need to embrace both as one thing.
100% agree. And I think that the reason that it is the neglected child of the hospitality, family, is that because it's so much the convergence between marketing and operations, that the
Mhm,
operations people believe it should leave it to the marketing, and the marketing people believe that's in the court of operations.
mhm.
So nobody does it. And I
Yeah,
think it's a little bit akin to the social media problem, because I also don't think that social media should be relegated to a social media intern who does everything. Uh, I think that you should have a social media driven company where you're always thinking about, in everything you do, how that person is going to be sharing and communicating and promoting your experience while they're there in the design of the hotel. You know,
mhm.
you should be thinking about social media in the way you answer the phone. You should be thinking about it, because anything can turn into something that is going to attract future guests.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, some of the silos occur due to lack of knowledge or lack of understanding. And historically, people haven't wanted to tread on each other's toes. But we live in such an integrated world right now, and the mistake so many people still make is they treat people online and offline very differently. They treat people that walk into their lobby a certain way. You would never talk to them without anything other than respect when they are face to face. You would never think
True.
about not answering their questions. You would never think about, telling them no to something on when they're on property. And yet we do all of those things online every day because they're a faceless user, right? They're not a real person in our minds. And flipping that mindset across your entire organization and treating people online and offline as the same people, and trying to integrate those two so that you understand that someone isn't either online or offline, that they're both at the same time, is really critical. And once you realize that, you start behaving differently. And once you train and enculturate your staff to thinking that way, they start behaving differently. And it just has a magical effect. Reviews is a great example of that, right? Reviews are probably one of the most underutilized and misunderstood pieces of the puzzle when it comes to reputation, because back in the day we used to have these physical things called feedback cards, right, that people could fill out, And the marketers never touched those things. It was operations. The GMs would pay a lot of attention to those things because it was the feedback from the guests that would um, help them understand what they were doing well, what they could improve on, where the problems were, and it was important to them. But then we moved the physical feedback cards to online, and somehow the GMs in a lot of properties don't care about them anymore because now these are online people. It's let's pay someone like a third party or someone that's not qualified to go and respond to those reviews. Well, yes, it's still a feedback card, but it's also an entry point to a lot of people to your brand. It's also a conversation point with your customer and every potential customer you have. So you can't think of it just as a feedback card. You can't treat it with anything other than the utmost respect because it's the best um, signal you get from your consumer about how you're doing, and you can both respond to that to show your guests you care and keep them coming back, but you can also data mine the information from those reviews to inform your marketing strategy so that you can target the right audience and you can set the appropriate expectations so that when next people come back, they have a better time than they would have because now you're telling them more precisely what it is you deliver. And they come here and they enjoy it, and then they leave more positive reviews and they tell their friends, and your ADR increases, and it's a magical utopia. But people
It's
don't look at it that way.
it's really true. You know, as the information comes in, it's not meant to go into a drawer. It's not meant to be answered online. I've sent my response, so I'm done and dusted.
Right. That's that
That's
checklist mentality. I'm done
that's
with
not the
the to-do
point.
item. Yeah.
You when everybody would like to think of their company as being innovative. They want their company to be innovative. They want to know that they're making progress. But if you're not using the voice of the customer, taking apart what actually happened, where was the breakdown in communication that caused this um, uh, gap
Mhm.
between what I think we are and what they think of us. And usually I say communication gap because half the time it's a communication gap. Very
Mm.
often it's a process issue, that something got dropped along the way and you just need to fix the process. It's not somebody's fault. um, I always say also that it's never the employee's fault because the leadership hired them and was meant to train them and empower them and support them and
Absolutely.
inspire them to do the right thing. So it's never the front
Mhm.
desk's fault or the housekeeping's fault. It's the leadership. I mean, that's what we're there for. So if the information comes in, you're supposed to take that information and make a change so that the next customer doesn't have a repeat of the exactly same issue that you had. For example, if somebody comes to if you have people who came to the front desk, they booked through an OTA, you didn't get the second name of the traveling companion, and the wife comes in with the kids. I always give this example, and they want to check in before, but it's in the husband's name. And then there's this breakdown and disaster that leads to a one-star review because the hotel wouldn't let me in, even though I'm the wife. And I should have, they should have been prepared for me. And all we had to do is change the pre-stay email to ask them to give us all the names of the guests and what they're in town for and everything. And now we're so well prepared because people were happy to provide that information pre-stay once we were asking for it.
Yeah,
And
because you're providing
and
value to them. People are willing to jump through these extra hoops or provide you with, say, contact information as a privilege to use that if you provide value to them. People forget it's a relationship, and every point of contact you have with every guest is an opportunity to strengthen that relationship or to erode that relationship. So always looking at it through the guest's perspective. What are the friction points that we are creating through our process, and is it possible for us to eliminate those? It doesn't really matter how you eliminate those, and that's where people get fixated. But it's more about, do you have a philosophy, a culture, in a focus to try to tackle the problems? And reviews are a great opportunity for you to identify where those friction points are, because I bet if you have a problem like that, it's not isolated to one or two people. A lot of reviews are going to start to bubble up that share similar stories. You got to understand what the root cause of those friction points are and address those systematically.
By the way, I just got my second vaccine, so
Mhm.
I'm ready to travel. I made
Yeah.
my first reservation to be near my parents, and I went on TripAdvisor. I was just looking for something that was convenient. I don't need a lot of bells and whistles. I was just looking for something simple to stay near my parents. And on TripAdvisor, there was an ad that said about this hotel that where we were thinking was going to be convenient and where we had stayed before
Mhm.
comfortably, and said best, best rate guarantee or something of that. You won't find a better rate somewhere else,
Mhm.
and there's a promise behind it. And there's no caveats, or so I click so book now on that little ad, takes me to the booking engine, and quickly I see it's $10 a night more than it is on my phone.
Mhm.
So if I hadn't just clicked on the ad, it wouldn't even have, I wouldn't have thought about it very much. But I thought they probably don't realize that every OTA in the universe has it at $99 when it's more here. And so I said, I'm going to help them. I'm going to call them and say, hey, I'm the kind of person that likes to book direct because I'm a hotelier and that's what I do. And I know that everybody needs the money right now to keep it to themselves if they can.
Mhm.
So I mean, they're making this guarantee because they want me to come direct, so I'm gonna tell them of the problem. And what happened there was the most inhospitable experience. I was like thinking I was really being nice, letting, hey, I really want to book direct, but this is what's happening for me. Like, we have policies, da,
Mhm.
da, da, you must fill out, they didn't even tell me I had to fill out a form, but other people afterwards, well, you'd have to fill out a form. Well, you have to call the corporate office for that. So it's so much stuff. But anyway, it was the whole reservation experience didn't have one little. I'm happy to help you with your reservation. Thanks for calling us. There was like nothing. And
Mhm.
I was really shocked. And I'll never
Yeah.
say what brand it
Yeah,
was.
I mean, that's completely eroded any relationship you had with them. It's gone. It's back to below zero, and it's so easy to fix. If you can create a culture, and it starts with the people. We're in the people business. The most important people, although a lot of people will say it's your guest, which it sort of is. Right up there next to them is your staff, and hiring the right people that have this kind of servant attitude, and empowering them to solve people's problems and to show that they care about the guests, and to be hospitable to people, because after all, that is the industry we're in, is critical, and it comes from the top. And you see, there's certainly multiple styles of leadership at all levels of hospitality. But if you look at the GM, there are really two very distinct types of GMs that I've observed, and you can tell throughout the entire organization which one it is almost as soon as you walk in the door. One is the person that's behind the desk looking at spreadsheets all day and worried about P&Ls and cost efficiencies and things like that. And the other is going to spend the majority of their day walking around, picking up trash, talking to their guests, getting feedback, encouraging, in complimenting the staff, doing the things that they want to be echoed within the entire organization. And you just
Absolutely.
feel the difference as soon as you walk in. And
You know, I I had stayed in that hotel, and I felt like everybody was nice when I was there. So I left a message, and I got a call back from the GM, and she was a hospitality hero and said, of course, of course, we're gonna make sure that it was like $4, whatever it was.
yeah,
That didn't matter, but I just wanted to be heard. But,
yeah,
I wanted to let you know that this was happening because you probably don't want to be losing any business
Right.
especially when you're making that promise. But she did do it. But it would have been so nice if when I first called, that person
Hmm.
had that same hospitality
Right.
response,
Yeah.
that it was
Yeah.
policy.
And again, it's not the person you called's fault. That's training, that's hiring, that's management. It's the people that set the tone. And although the GM obviously did a great job sort of handling the situation, they're not doing the other part of their job, which is ensuring that everyone, from top to bottom, has the empowerment and the attitude to handle things the right way.
Yeah.
Because for every Adele that's out there, there's 1,000 people that aren't going to jump through those hoops, aren't going to give them a second or a third chance, and they're just going to go book on the OTAs. And
Yeah, it might have been that call was transferred from the front desk to somewhere else, so it could have gone to the corporate office, sadly.
yeah, yeah, possibly. But I mean, it's a great illustration of how badly things can go wrong, when yet how simple it is to avoid those pitfalls as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So technology-wise, like the journey, where would you advise people to look at that guest journey and look for opportunities where you can change, where the marketing
Yeah.
can actually help support the guest experience, which is going to result in the reviews that support the marketing.
Right. Well, we've already talked about one side of reviews, right? Being that it's that conversation between a guest and you, where you can help the relationship. And we talked about how reviews can be a good signal, and mining the data from that can inform both operations and marketing. But they're also a massive tool in terms of attracting new guests to your property, because we know from the data, we've done studies, other people have done studies, and they all kind of come out around the same spot, that about 93% of people will not book a hotel, period, before they've read reviews. And how we use reviews as consumers has evolved, right? It used to be that I'd make my decisions and I just wanted to do a gut check and check the reviews right before I pulled the trigger, just so I know I'm not making a bad decision. I'm not going to get in trouble with my spouse. But now reviews have become this component throughout from the very beginning, from how I narrowed down my selection all the way to when I finally pull the trigger. We're using them at multiple touch points, but we know that 93% of people won't book before they read a review. We also know that about 87% of people will visit my own website, my hotel website, before making a booking. So wherever they go on to book on an OTA or wherever, they're visiting my site at some point in their shopping journey. So if you put those,
Wow, I really didn't think it was that high.
yeah. So that it's really, really high. People are bouncing from site to site. They're not just looking at one site and making a decision. A lot of them will go to an Expedia, or they probably start at Google, maybe from Google to TripAdvisor. From TripAdvisor, they click on a meta search and go to Expedia, then go back to Google and start doing some refined searches on the brands that they're interested in, and end up on the property site, and then probably end up bouncing back and either booking on Google, TripAdvisor, or Expedia, and not the property site. So I know from the data we've collected for our clients that you can get your reliance on OTAs down into the single digits. We have lots of properties that have done it, and yet
Mm.
there's so many properties out there that are 50% plus reliant on OTAs right now. And one of the things that you got to think about is, once you get 87% of people coming to your website, how do you answer their questions? How do you reassure them? How do you create incentives using psychology, using monetary incentives and other things? How do you encourage them to book direct with you? And there's a lot of tactical things you can do, but one of the best is to incorporate reviews into your website, into your booking engine process, so that people that are at that certain point of the journey, they're towards the end, they're getting ready to book, and they want to do that gut check, they don't have to go out of your ecosystem into someone else's, where they're getting pulled really hard. And the OTAs do a phenomenal job. TripAdvisor does a phenomenal job. Google does a phenomenal job of getting them to book on their ecosystem versus yours. So just simply incorporating testimonials or reviews, or a combination of those, into your website and into your booking process can move the needle dramatically in terms of your conversion rate.
How would you do it on the booking engine, on the top banner or something, or
Yeah,
on
I mean,
the
it
other
depends,
side
right?
ad or
This
something?
this is one of the age-old challenges in our industry. We have such a fragmented ecosystem when it comes to technology. There are over 750 what I would consider like non-one-off PMSs, right? So PMSs that have a certain number, more than a handful of properties using their system. There's over 750 of those. That's just the PMS. Now, on top of that, you've got a lot of those have their own booking engines, and then you've got obviously the big guys like Synexus in iHotelia, and then you've got the smaller guys like Fuel, and there's others out there that have booking technologies. Some people built their own, so it really varies from property to property how to implement it, and I think you've got to kind of do that journey on your own, but finding a way is the critical part. Obviously your website, when people come to your homepage, they should see clear messaging saying, hey, book direct, and there's an advantage for you. Here's the value if you book directly with us. We
Mhm.
recognize that you can go and book anywhere else on the internet, but if you get book with us, we'll appreciate it, and you get this, whatever this is, right? It might be some kind of discounted rate if
And
you
then
go.
actually deliver it
Well, so
without grief.
first is the promise, right? Then it's the delivery. But the promise is, hey, if you can choose to book with us, it's in your interest. Oh, and by the way, don't just believe us that you want to book here, because the guest has multiple choices, right? They're picking what destination they're going to stay at, what property they're going to stay at, and then where to book that property. So you want to try to anticipate all of the questions that they're going to have related to those three decisions, and try to make sure that you are the one that can answer those in an authentic way. And authenticity is critical here, because what you don't want to do is sell them on a bill of goods that you can't deliver on, and tell them that you're a 5-star property when you're a 3-star property. Be honest, be authentic about who you are. Show reviews that are accurate and fair, and show how you dealt with it. Don't just curate the best of the best, because you're setting yourself up for failure. And when we look at our brand position, a lot of people think of that's their logo, their colors, their fonts, and the stuff they put out. These are brand elements, but then they're not the brand. The brand is how your product, how you as an entity make the guest feel. And one of the biggest mistakes you can make is when the brand expectations that you set and the brand experience that the guest receives are not aligned. That's the gap that you were talking about earlier. And that's where distrust is caused. And that's where we end up getting really bad reviews and losing loyal guests. So you got to
Yeah.
make sure there's alignment between brand expectations and brand experience. If you can do that, then you and the guest have the same thoughts on what the brand is, and then you're going to be doing just fine.
I couldn't agree more. Everything you say is music to my ears. I absolutely think that that is the most important thing. And a lot of times I feel that people talk about reputation and how to manage your reviews and how to get great reviews is all about what technology you buy.
Yeah.
But actually, if you don't have the mindset here and
Hmm.
here, all the tools in the world are never going to help. But put in the hands of people who truly care,
Hmm.
tools are going to make
Yeah,
you fly, just give you wings, right?
I agree. I have a saying I like to use a lot with my team and with any group that I'm working with, but where focus goes, energy flows. And so you've got to make reviews, which, keep in mind, reviews are a byproduct of how you operate. They're not the thing you're really focused on, although you should be focused on them. They're the outcome of the fact you're focused on the guest experience. And you can use, technology, and you can use strategy to drive more reviews and increase the quality of the reviews. But ultimately, the focus you need to have is, are you delivering on the guest experience based on the guest expectations that you set yourself and that guests have before they arrive? So if you're focused on that being the core of your business, which it should be, then your behavior changes and energy changes, what the behavior, the things that you're implementing, the tasks that you're undertaking will change based on the fact that you're having conversations on a regular basis with all of your staff members about why this is important. Why does this matter to us? Here's, the business rationale for it. Here's the sense of fulfillment rationale for it. Here's our core beliefs and why it's a part of our DNA. If we're having those conversations, not just in the training session when we onboard new staff members, but every single day with every single person we interact with. If that's our focus, that's where the energy is going to end up flowing. And we're going to do great with our reviews, with repeat guests. When we know from a business perspective, that's going to lead to higher ADRs, higher occupancy, longer stays, all of the things that we're really trying to strive for.
Well, absolutely. I always said that we need to be talking about kindness and compassion morning, noon, and night.
So making your reputation, part of the DNA of your organization, and talking about it all day, every day, like you said.
Absolutely. At the Library Hotel Collection, those hotels did crazy, crazy guest review scores. We were so proud to have the top guest review scores of any luxury hotel brand, according to Review Pro, with a 96.1% guest satisfaction rate company-wide. And you could see our scores always going up year after year, 94%, 95%, 96%, like that. But we did it without having formal training sessions at all. People talk about training being so important to guest reviews, but we just did it every day. And every pre-shift huddle was a good time to give some energy and some focus to, let's make people happy today. What are we going to do? Let's go the extra mile for them. Let's try to think of creative ways. Remember to sparkle some sunshine on every single guest. Mm-hmm. And because that conversation was morning, noon, and night, pretty much we're able to keep that focus at the top of their mind. But there needs to be someone who's driving that. Mm-hmm. And it was easy for me because I was the vice president of the company. So it was easy for me to get them on board. I mean, I could have sat around that boardroom the very first time. But let's be number one. Let's get to the top. Let's do everything we can to outshine everybody else. And the team could have said, no, that seems too hard, but they didn't. They all said, yeah, we can do it. We can do it. And because they believed they could, and because we kept telling them we believed that they could, and because every decision we made, we would say, how is this impacting the guest experience? Mm-hmm. Is this investment that we're making going to have a positive impact on the guest experience? If it's not, maybe we should not spend it on that thing that would be nice and spend it on something that impacts the guest experience instead. Yeah. Because that was our philosophical commitment.
Yeah, I think it's smart. And, a lot of people approach this, it's very overwhelming. And we have a tendency as an industry to try to proceduralize everything, right? We try to create a formula so that we can scale things. And, there's fair amount of turnover in our industry. So we try to create these SOPs and these documents that say, this is how we do X, Y, Z. And so, when we're talking about something like reviews, it's really easy to fall into the trap of, if review equals positive, respond like this. If review equals negative, respond like this. And you can see that on TripAdvisor or Google, where there's a formula that people follow. It's so unauthentic. It shows no empathy for the situation. And, the guest doesn't buy it. And so it does more harm than good to take that kind of approach that is scalable. What's much better is to hire people and empower them to fix problems, to talk to other people like human beings. And if the person that's responsible for responding to your reviews isn't capable of doing that, then you probably have the wrong person responding to the reviews. But you need to set them up for success by sharing a culture that it believes in certain core values, believes in a certain way of doing things, has a guiding principle or a lens through which they can make decisions. In in my experience, to create that kind of culture, the best way to do it isn't by, having some razzle dazzle presentations and rah-rahs. It's through storytelling. It's by sharing, just like you did at library collection, where you would share stories of when people did it right, and perhaps when people didn't do it quite so right, where there's an opportunity for a teachable moment and we can improve on that. But the more you share stories and focus on the positives, it's amazing how quickly you'll see alignment behind the whole team. People are really predictable. It's easy to dangle carrots in front of people and lead them in a direction. And positivity is such a powerful force within an organization. Everyone wants a job that feels fulfilling. Everyone wants to come in and look forward to seeing their colleagues and their clients. And you can create that experience for everyone by telling stories of positivity. But at the end of the day, it's got to come from the top, and you've got to have a cheerleader like you were at Library Collection. You know, no offense to them, but my guess would be, with you gone from that organization, it's probably not as big a focus as it used to be, and we'll probably start to see the impact of that over time.
Well, they know that I'm there for them on a virtual. I'll be happy to do virtual business with them and everything once they reopen. They haven't set reopening dates yet,
Mhm.
but I'm sure it's going to come soon now that people are really getting vaccinated, and I think everything is definitely on the rise. So
Yeah. But you got to
I
you got to have an internal champion, and then turn it into a culture where it just everyone eats and breathes that same philosophy. If you can do
yeah,
that, it becomes a lot easier.
and what you were saying about, that the person who is writing the responses needs to be a certain kind of person, you know, negative reviews are really best handled by a team,
Hmm.
because you need maybe the person who is the gracious writer who is able to compose a really heartfelt and compelling response that touches people's hearts and minds in the right way. But you need the general manager and probably the director of sales and marketing. And maybe if there's a front desk issue, maybe you need somebody, the front office manager or one of the assistant front office managers. Maybe you need the food and beverage director or the restaurant manager. You need to have the people in the room who are the stakeholders for dealing with that problem. And before you begin to write the first word to respond to a negative review, you have to figure out what your internal response is. So what did they order? Why did it take so long that day? Do you know what day they were in the restaurant? Why did it take 45 minutes for them to get their breakfast? What can we do to facilitate,
Yeah.
that? How can we access some extra space on a terrace or in another, or can we offer breakfast in another area as well? What can we do? And because collaborating with a group of creative people who want to make things happen is always going to be more successful than a single human being who can't possibly know everything about the entire operation as well and can make the decision. One
Yeah.
time I read a review that was written by a front desk supervisor, and oh, I'm sorry you didn't like the beds. We'll be sure to get that corrected. That I'm sure you didn't like the mattress. We'll be sure to get that corrected right away. Like service agent or supervisor has the ability to buy a new
Yeah.
mattress for that bed. It's just not
Right. For
real.
that one guest who could come back at any point and stay in any room, right? Yeah. It's an unauthentic response. And I think, you got to be careful with reviews, right? Because you don't want it to take up 100% of everyone's time. So that you've got to start to try to organize the information you're gathering in a way that's meaningful and you start by saying, okay, I'm going to empower someone or some people to be the kind of stewards of this, to be curating this, to be sort of figuring out what is an appropriate response, what's not, and to be smart enough and empowered enough to identify patterns extreme situations that need to be dealt with, and then scheduling within your team time every month to sit down as a group and analyze this information that's being gathered by that central person, and dealing with, okay, well, let's get to the root of why. Okay, we've had 7 reviews this month that say that the wait at breakfast is too long, and it's always on Wednesdays. What's different about Wednesdays? Well, we have different stuff. Well, let's peel back that onion by asking why at least 5 times. Why is that? Why is that? And you'll get to the root cause. And then, having the people, the leadership in the room to be able to make meaningful changes. I wouldn't worry so much if one guest said, I had a bad night's sleep. You're going to get that. But if you start seeing a pattern, by the time the 5th or the 6th says, this is the most uncomfortable mattress I've ever slept on, this is when it should trigger a warning, and you should have a system, feedback system, where you're sitting down and focusing on that so that your energy flows to solving those problems.
Yeah. Regarding the mattress issue, by the way, hotels always have great mattresses, but they also always have people that their bodies are different and their desires are different,
Preference
and
thing. Yeah.
their comfort level. If you're getting a couple of mattress complaints here and there, and you don't want to get those anymore because they're possibly preventing somebody from booking. Oh, I don't know that. I
Mm-hmm.
see several people saying about the mattress. You can have feather toppers, you can have foam mattress toppers, you can have a couple of different kinds of pillows and blankets and even mattresses. Or somebody asks, how is your room? Are you comfortable? Is everything going okay? Well, to tell you the truth, mattress is a little hard for me. Oh, you know what? We have these toppers. I can have that put on your bed while you're out at work or while you're out sightseeing. We did that, and
Mm-hmm.
it really solved a
Yeah.
million.
Yeah, it's great. And you've got to be smart enough as an organization to know how complex you want to make those things, right? Because the last thing you want to do is set, again, an expectation online that you can't deliver on, or even on property. Like if you only have 3 firm rooms and 3 soft bedrooms, and someone stayed with you and always wanted a firm mattress, but they come this one time and they're all booked, and they didn't have a way to select that in the booking process, then it's another opportunity where you're creating a gap between that brand expectation and the brand experience. So I think you got to be careful that you design solutions that don't create more problems. But I also think you need to own who you are as well. One of the things that I always tell people when we're talking about marketing side of things is, marketing isn't a magical trick to compel someone to come stay with you no matter what. What marketing does is it amplifies and shines a light on what you are and what you have and what you deliver. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's not going to be the right fit for everyone. And it's okay to tell people that. And there was an example a long time ago, back early in my career, where there was a property in New York City, and it was getting bashed on reviews because they had small rooms, and people were expecting larger rooms. And it's New York. You're going to get some hotels that have larger rooms and some that were small, but there was no mention of them having undersized rooms anywhere on their website. So people were coming expecting a normal size hotel room and getting disappointed because it was a small hotel room. So what they did is they changed their marketing communications, and they started putting content, in the room descriptions and the booking engine, throughout the website and the accommodations pages, talking about the fact that, yes, these rooms are smaller, but they're cozy and comfy, and started selling it as an asset, not as a problem. And people were coming expecting smaller rooms, and a lot of times they weren't as small as they were anticipating. And we saw a 180 on the reviews. These rooms are great. They're cozy and comfy, and it was reinforcing all the messaging we put out. Nothing had physically changed other than we reset expectations coming in. And so that again comes back to this, making sure there's no gap there between the brand expectations that you're setting for the guest and the brand experience that they're actually perceiving.
Absolutely. We had that situation as well. As some of our hotels had rooms that we called petite, And I remember before the library hotel opened, I was visiting travel agencies, letting them know about the opening. And one travel agent said, "You're not a very good marketer, because if you tell me the room is petite, it means I'm probably not going to take it." And I go, "Well, I wouldn't want you to
Good.
I wouldn't want you to take it if
Mhm,
you're not going to be comfortable in a 200 square foot room." But
mhm,
we had, the 3D image of the room. We had the measurements of the room. I even had two of the staff take a picture of a man and a woman actually in the bed, or on the bed, I should say,
mhm,
in bathrobes, so that people could get the perspective of the
mhm.
difference between you on a full size bed versus a queen size bed versus a king size bed, so they understood. Because in some countries, king and queen and everything, those are not described the same way. So we showed the measurements of the mattress, everything that they needed to know to make a perfect decision.
Yeah, I think that's really smart of you. And you really, as long as the content's organized well, you can't provide too much information. Like, don't let it get in the way of someone making a decision. Make sure it's discoverable, findable, searchable. But you can't have too many photos. You can't have too much written content. You can't have too many FAQs or reviews or any other pieces of information that are going to help someone make a decision. Don't overwhelm them with it. I'm not saying throw everything at them at once, but be deliberate about the information you're showing at the appropriate time in their travel journey. Let them kind of steer that. But boy, if you set the right expectations, you're going to see that you're getting the right type of person. And if you're not sure what that information is you should be showing them, have a conversation with your existing guests. Why did you choose me? What is it you love about us? Why are you coming here? And then start looking at your reviews and see the positive, the 5-star reviews. What are the things that people are calling out as the reason they gave a 5-star review? That needs to come back into your marketing strategy. You need to start using that information. You might think that the atrium is the selling point of your property, but other people might say it's the wicked fast Wi-Fi, So you shift your messaging, you shift the weighting of what you're talking about on all your marketing channels to that which the consumer values, not that which you spent the most money on, or that which your owner thinks is the most impressive. It's always driven by the consumer. Reviews, in talking to, engaging your customers, sending out surveys to your customers and asking them questions is one of the most underutilized tactics in all of marketing. And it's cheap, and it's easy, and it's so valuable. So everyone should be doing that.
That's a great idea, and I never did that. And I wish I had now, because it makes so much sense to send out an email survey. Why not do that and get
Yeah,
the
we
information?
forget that it's a relationship, right? We forget that there's value um, beyond the communication we're typically used to, right? So people have this notion that I can send out messages to them promoting stuff on a certain cadence, and I can send them a confirmation email and a pre-arrival email, and I can send them one email after their stay asking for a review or whatnot. But that's nonsense. Like, treat them like a real person. And what you'll find is, if you ask people, you value that, you tell people, I value your opinion, please take a few minutes, maybe even incentivize that. Hey, we're going to do a $50 gift card drawing for the first, for 5 people that respond to this. You don't have to do that, but some people have done it. But we value your opinion. Tell us what you think about us. Tell us not just about your stay, but what motivates you, what your sentiment is. When are you thinking of coming back? You start to build these kind of a better understanding of who your consumer is. And you can start to use that to inform your marketing strategy, but you can also use that information to communicate with them better in the future. If you find out that this person cares about certain things, you can tailor your messaging, personalize your messaging. And if you're really really on top of it, you can put that information back into their profile within your PMS and use it to enhance their experience next time they come and stay with you.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah,
What a
that's kind of next level stuff, but it is possible.
Fantastic. Do you ever give any advice to your clients about search engine optimization in responding to the positive reviews? I mean, I know I'm always telling people, for example, please stop putting your hotel name 3 times in the response to a 1-star review. That's not probably a good idea.
Yeah.
But give them any tips about how to respond to the positive reviews in a way that would make it more meaningful. Gee, thanks very much. Oh, we can't wait to see you again. Something beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, when you're writing any content for the web, whether it's a review response or a blog on your website, we've moved on from keyword stuffing in writing for search engines. The search engine crawlers and indexing now is so sophisticated that it understands natural language in its truest form. So always write for people first, search engine second. So don't try to keyword stuff. Don't try to overthink it or write in a robotic way. Write in a natural way, but be conscious that you're not using, ambiguous terminology like acronyms that are unnecessary. Make sure you're using the language that your consumer would be using. It's really good to think about how people use search engines. Typically people are looking to answer a question or they're looking for a product. So if you can formulate your content in that kind of structure, it can be helpful, so thinking about that, but I wouldn't get too hung up on necessarily trying to over engineer the responses to reviews for search engines. I think it's more important that you're getting the value of writing a compelling response that is going to, not only provide value back to the guest that left the initial review, but also is going to appeal and persuade the other people, the thousands of other people that are going to see that review and that response when they're doing their search, wherever that might be on Google or TripAdvisor. But then the other part related to search engines that I would focus on your website, a keyword that a lot of people will type in is your brand name space reviews, right? At some point in the travel journey, they're gonna go back to Google and they're gonna type in your brand reviews. So that's another reason why having reviews and testimonials on your own website is important. And when you put that content on there, make sure it's regularly updated. Doesn't necessarily have to be real time. It's something you could statically refresh every couple of months and you'd be fine. But make sure you use schema markup. Make sure which is kind of code behind the scenes that the search engines look at to identify certain types of data structure. So if you use schema markup when you're putting reviews and testimonials on your site, you're telling Google this is a review. So that gives more credit to your site so that when someone comes back and types in reviews for your brand name or your brand name space reviews, you have a higher chance of showing up near the top. Right now, for almost every hotel out there, the number one response organically when you type in your brand name reviews is going to be TripAdvisor. Sure, it would be great if it was your own website. So putting some effort towards that I think is a smart SEO strategy.
That is great advice. That is absolutely fantastic advice. I completely agree. When you write for Google, it's so obvious and it doesn't sound nice or gracious in any way. It feels like you're talking to a machine instead of a human being. You want to feel like the general manager of the hotel has shared this information with you when you're looking at the website. And it should really always feel like it's coming from the heart, if that's the kind of hotel you want to be.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You can have a different personality. It doesn't matter. There's a property in Ireland, and I'm blanking on the name right now. I think it's in Dublin, that has a lot of fun with their responses on reviews, especially the negative ones. They kind of taken this tongue-in-cheek kind of like antagonistic response strategy, but they do it in such a way that it's funny, not offensive, and it's gotten them a lot of attention. And so you can do that. Focus on who is your consumer, who's your target audience, how did they speak? If you're looking to target young urban travelers, speak in their language, use their nomenclature, use their syntax. You don't have to be, it's not a press release from a Fortune 500 company. You don't have to be super professional in everything you do. Be authentic, be yourself. Show the
Absolutely.
experience they're going to expect, they're going to have when they come on property.
And isn't the Irish sense of humor half of what you go to Ireland for anyway?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't advise that for a lot of properties. You got to be really witty to pull that kind of strategy off, because man, that could backfire really quickly. But there are certain brands that make their living on that. Dick's Last Resort is a restaurant chain. I don't know if it's everywhere, but in South Carolina they have them, and you go there and you're going to get offended by the waiting staff. They try to poke fun at you from the minute you walk in. They try to embarrass you. It's part of the experience. I'm not saying that's the best one that your hotel should adopt, but
It's fun though.
it illustrates that you can pick a lane and you can stick into it. Wendy's Twitter account is a great example of that. It's not necessarily the same experience you get in the restaurant, but they picked a lane and they've stuck to it. They poke fun at everyone on their Twitter account, and you know it's a choice you have to make. But once you do, lean into it hard, and be true to who you are and who you want to be. But it has to be the right voice for the audience that you're trying to target.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart, for taking the time to join me. I have to give one more plug to your podcast. Definitely follow the Fuel Hospitality Marketing Podcast. It's a lot of fun and full of great information. Stuart, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Yeah, if you want to subscribe to that, fuelhotelmarketing.com/podcast is where you can get it.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Hospitality Reputation Marketing Podcast as well. And if you need any help on how to connect the dots between what the guests are telling you by their reviews and their feedback, and how to actually make that into a path of continuous improvement for your hotel, and learn how to get and inspire 5-star reviews, I can help you with that at adelegutman.com. Thanks so much, everyone. And thank you, Stuart, once again.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye.